Right, action.
So Ryan, we've been learning about the camera today and how to use it. What do you want to know?
Well, what I want to know, perhaps what our viewers want to know is, what's aperture and how does that affect a good quality photo?
Well, aperture is basically how wide your lens opens when you take a picture. The wider it opens, the more light you get in, and basically your aperture goes from a low scale to a high scale, the high value. The lower it is, the wider your lens opens and the more light you get let in. So therefore I get more focus on the objects nearer to me than far away. So if I wanted to take a picture of a person close up, I'd use a low aperture setting, which would leave you in focus and the background blurry. If I wanted to take a picture of like a landscape, I'd use a high aperture setting, which would keep the whole landscape in focus.
That is amazing, that is good to know. Another question that's really baffling me is, what does ISO mean and how does that affect picture quality?
To be honest, I have no idea what ISO stands for.
Okay.
But the higher the ISO, the more light is let into the camera and you get a lighter image without using the flash. But it also can lead to grain or noise on some cameras and the picture quality and reduce the quality of the picture. But yeah, as I said, you can increase the brightness of the picture by using a higher ISO setting.
Excellent, okay, and one final question. How does shutter speed affect quality of photos? So let's say, for example, I wanted to film some athletics and there were some sprinters running along and I wanted to get the best shot. What would I do with the shutter speed then?
Well, I'm trying to think. If you wanted to take a picture of something moving really fast, you'd use a really high shutter speed to get lots of little like quick snapshots of that really short space in time. But then if you wanted to do a kind of motion picture, you'd use a lower shutter speed to get the kind of blur behind that image. But then what you also want to be careful with is if you use a too lower shutter speed, is that you end up holding your camera and you might start shaking it about and then you get a kind of blur of what you don't want. So you might want to use a tripod when you're using shutter speeds of below 160, I think, yeah. So yeah, and then you also have various cheat modes on the camera. So on the camera you have this button of a person running, that's your high shutter speed for athletics or car racing or football. Then you have this one of a hill, that's your high aperture setting for taking landscapes. Then this is your portrait mode, so your low aperture setting for taking portraits. That's auto, so just does everything for you. Manual, that's where you have to do all the work. And then this A stands for aperture, where you can change your aperture setting on the screen. Here on the F with the number in front of the F, and you change this style. The lower the number, the lower the aperture, etc. And then if I change it back to manual, this dial here will change this number here, if you just see that changing. That's your shutter speed. And then also, if I wanted to change the ISO setting, I hold the ISO button here and change that dial like so, and your ISO value changes. That's Ram and Ryan.
Oh, Ram, well I have to say I was a complete camera technophobe, but thanks to your brilliant explanations there, I think I could basically become a professional photographer from tomorrow. So thanks very much for that.
I'm glad to be of service.
Well, you certainly have been. And to all our viewers, take care and good night.